starting from, let us say, gross domestic product, gross national product, then net domestic product, net national product. All these things can be computed even at market prices and factor cost. Also, they can be expressed at current prices or constant prices. The computations of them are very important. Problems can be also expected in the examination. In the earlier exams, certain problems were also asked from that computation or determination of national income related topics. Also, we started with the Keynesian two-sector model, wherein only two segments of the society will exist, which is an imaginary model. In that, only the firms and households will be there, and very important concepts of marginal propensity to consume and marginal propensity to save, consumption function and saving function also we discussed in the earlier session. And in a two-sector economy, C plus I is equal to C plus S. That automatically makes it I is equal to S. And the concept of multiplier also we have discussed, which improves the overall national income with a limited input in the form of investment. So that is the multiplier concept, very important one, even in reality and exam point of view also. And what are the things which will act like leakages? That means which will nullify the positive impact of the multiplier. Also, we discussed injections and leakages are opposite with each other. Injections will be good for the economy. They will be additions to the circular flow, whereas leakages are outlays or outflows from the circular flow, which will reduce the positive impacts of multiplier. Now, moving on to a three-sector model. In the three-sector model of Keynes, in addition to the household consumption and investment from the business, C plus I, there is one more player that is added, that is government. And that can be considered as G. And what the government does. So what is the role of the government in an economy or in a three-sector model in general if we see? Government sector adds the following key flows. First thing first, taxes on the household and business sector will be charged by the government so that the government gets some revenue, which in turn it will spend on purchases. Government does transfer payments to the household sector and subsidy payments to the business sector. And then government is the biggest purchaser in any country, in fact. And it is the biggest customer. If one party is taken, government will be the biggest customer for the goods and services for the households as well as businesses. Because the households will give their factor services to the government in the form of labor. All the government employees fall in that category. And businesses supply their goods and services to the government also. And in addition to that, government borrows funds from the financial market, naturally, in order to fund the deficits that occur whenever the receipts of the government in the form of taxes fall short of the government expenditure. So that is a three-sector model. In this three-sector model, equilibrium will be there where C plus I plus G, C plus I plus G is crossing the total of income, that is C plus S. So comparatively, if we see from the earlier equilibrium, now the equilibrium has moved upwards. In other words, that is a clear indication that with the infusion of government expenditure, the overall national income of any country will grow. So government expenditure also adds to the national income in a three-sector economy or three-sector model. But of course, the reality is that there will be another sector, that is fourth sector also, which is external sector. So the practical situation, what we can see in any economy current day, except maybe few countries like North Korea, most of the economies are open economies, which include external sector. So why in that external sector, also when it is included is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. So in other words, the total of the national income is simply the consumption expenditure of households, investment of businesses, government expenditure, plus exports, minus imports. That's what is the circular flow in a four sector economy. Here we can understand one more point from the sign itself. X is adding to the Y, M is deducting the Y. In other words, exports act like injections into the economy, whereas imports act like leakages from the economy. So in the four sector economy model, what are the additional things that are added? Definitely exports and imports. And exports definitely represent the foreign demand for domestic output. So they are part of the aggregate demand. They will increase the national income. Imports will decrease the national income because a portion of income that is produced domestically is being spent on imports where the money will go outside. So that is why imports can be considered as part of leakages in a four sector economy. Naturally, that will determine whether the Y is more in the four sector economy than the three sector economy. For example, if you take the basic two sector economy, which had only C plus I, definitely G has added to that. So from two sector to three sector, there is no doubt that whether it will increase national income or decrease national income. With the intervention of G, definitely the national income will be more. But with the four sector economy, that cannot be said because here we want to calculate X minus EM. And here this could be a positive thing also, negative thing also. Net exports, what we can call. So net export is exports minus imports. If it is positive, it will add to the national income. If it is negative, whatever the existing income also that is generated by C plus I plus G will be reduced. So simply, when exports are more than imports, that is going to increase the equilibrium level and national income accordingly. On the contrary, when imports are more than exports, then it will decrease the national income from the earlier stages. So here, if you observe, this was the earlier equilibrium C plus I plus G. Now it got reduced. Why? Because this was a scenario where imports are greater than exports. And reverse will happen if exports are greater than imports. So that is the essence of two sector, three sector, and four sector economies as propagated by Keynes. Very crucial theoretical understanding, and that gives more of insights into how various things will either add to the economy or they will act like leakages in the economy. And when we look at the multiplier in a four sector model, this is going to be the formula for multiplier in a four sector model. Normally, the multiplier is 1 divided by 1 minus B. Only that. B we know that is marginal propensity to consume. Then 1 minus B will be naturally marginal propensity to save. So 1 divided by 1 minus B will be the multiplier in a two sector economy, normally speaking. But in a four sector economy, one more thing is added, that is V. V is what? That is called as propensity to import. Definitely it should be greater than 0. If value of V is greater, in other words, a country is more dependent on imports or the propensity to import is more, that is going to reduce the multiplier naturally. And I understand this very clearly. 1 divided by 1 minus B. If this is the one, and we want a multiplier, let us say K, and any country wants the multiplier to be higher. Naturally, multiplier higher is a good thing. But how that can be higher? When the denominator is lower, then only it can be higher. And when the numerator is 1 anyway, so that is not going to change. Only denominator is the impacting factor. When the denominator is lower, then only the multiplier will be higher. And when will the denominator be lower? If 1 minus B is the denominator, when B is higher. So when the marginal propensity to consume is more, people are consuming more, then investment multiplier or expenditure multiplier will be higher. Whereas if marginal propensity to consume is less, then marginal propensity to save is more. That means denominator is more, then the multiplier will become less. So because of this minus and because it is in the denominator, B and K are directly related. When B is more, then K also will be more. That is one thing we have to identify. It is like simply mathematically also can be identified because it is in minus side. But V is not like that. V is opposite. V is plus here in the denominator. In other words, if V or marginal propensity to import is more, K will become lesser. That means the investment multiplier will be lower. That is not good for any economy. So ideally, V should become lesser, marginal propensity to import should be lesser, so that K will become higher. That is one of the reasons we are all talking about make in India, reduce the burden of imports. Earlier, we used to almost import everything, including each and every mobile phone. But now, though the companies are owned by some foreign companies, but still manufacturing is happening in India, assembling is happening in India. To some extent, the burden on imports is reduced. Whatever extent it reduces, whatever extent V reduces, that is good for the economy because that increases K, that is the investment multiplier. So obviously, any country would like to have exports more, imports less, marginal propensity to imports less. Naturally, because of that, investment multiplier to be higher. That is the overall understanding of national income in different names, and at the same time, three different layers or situations of economies: two sector, three sector, and four sector models. Now, moving on to the second chapter or topic, public finance. So, what is public finance? Is basically the study of the role of the government in a market economy. Normally, when we are looking at all the economics that we have been studying, whether earlier in foundation level or CPT level or at intermediate level now, whether it is microeconomics or the macroeconomics that we are studying now, whatever it is related to market economy only. It is the basic theories related to the capitalist economy, wherein the demand and supply are going to take care of everything. Entire market economy is dependent upon demand and supply. And the traditional capitalist economists have always argued that government should never interfere into the market because market is a self-correcting mechanism. It is efficient by itself. So government intervention should be minimum is the argument of pure capitalist economists since more than a century. But later, after the Great Depression in 1929-30, and even after the Second World War particularly, that opinion has changed. Even in the capitalist countries, even the countries where markets are the dominant things than the governments, there also government intervention is necessary in order to correct the market failures is the new funda that they have brought in, which we are looking at now. That is the study of public finance. Simply speaking, what should be the role of the state government? State means not Andhra Pradesh state, Telangana state, Maharashtra state. State means government. Whatever the form it may be, democracy, kingdom, whatever, that doesn't matter. But ultimately, every state or every government has a role in the market. It cannot be left to the market. That is the new philosophy. New, not now. Post World War II, it has become more popular. And Richard Musgrave has been phenomenal in introducing this concept of government intervention, which is important for markets also. Because we cannot say that markets are left on their own without government intervention will always work towards efficiency, which was the assumption earlier, which failed. Practically, that system could not sustain. Markets always have business cycles. They may look very good when we just draw them like this, but so many people will die at this stage. When the economy is down, so many people lose the jobs, so many people die of hunger, a lot of people do not have food also. And then, okay, when it is in boom, people are okay, slowly getting employment back and all. Again, that goes down. So these markets will have these cycles that is inevitable in their inbuilt structure. If that is just left to that, it becomes more of a kind of jungle raj, where only the powerful will survive, the weak will have to be just get extincted or eaten by somebody else. That is not correct for human societies. That is why government intervention is important in relation to markets also. What are the functions of the government at a broader level? There are three functions. One is allocation, then redistribution, then stabilization function. These are the roles of the government. Government is not doing anything which is extraordinary if it is doing this. That is the duty of the government. Even before that, generally we can understand what is government, why government required. Government is a contract that people have entered into with either few individuals or a group of individuals, wherein we, the people, have sacrificed our rights to become or act as we wish. We cannot, because that is what is society. The society has some rules, laws, regulations, and who has to ensure these are all fulfilled? Government. So government is given a responsibility by the people, irrespective of whatever the type of government it might be. So it has some duties. What kind of duties? Resource allocation, redistribution, and stabilization function. Out of these three, the first two functions are microeconomic functions. Stabilization function is a macroeconomic function, which the government will generally try to do through its fiscal policy. And not only that, government cannot be just sitting and watching the markets as they wish. No. According to these theories of public finance, which we are going to study, markets fail. Market failure is inevitable because of various reasons. So what the government should do? Should it tell that, okay, boss, failures are common, let it fail? No, it cannot do that. It has to intervene and somehow correct that market failure. That is the job of the government. That is the role of the government in a nutshell. And if you look at one by one each of the functions, we don't have to go into very deep of them. That much time is also not available. But in general, at a broader level, if we go through them, allocation function is basically the resource allocation. Natural resources as well as human resources in any country will be, in general, in the hands of the government or at least government regulation. So government can, let us say, give a land to a company. Let us say Amazon has been given some 100 acres of land somewhere near Anantapur. Who gave that? Government gave that. Why? Okay, with an idea or a objective that there will be some economic activity, lot of big godowns will come there and some people will get employment. Like that, government will allocate something. So government's function is to help the market and to help the private businesses also. Government itself need not always enter into the business. Sometimes it does that also, but not necessary. It can create an atmosphere where the businesses can flourish by creating infrastructure for them, by giving allocation of resources to them, which are important for them. So resource allocation is a very important job of government. Land or natural resources, particularly mining is happening, let us say in India, coal mining or copper mining or any other metals mining is happening at a big level, varieties, etc. Who is giving those mines leases? Government gives that. So government creates that kind of situation where resources are allocated. It's a different story whether all these things happen really straightforward. Will there be corruption involved? That is not what we are getting into. That is the implementation issue. But conceptually, government is supposed to do that. That is the job of the government, resource allocation. That is one of the points to be noted when we talk about government resource allocation. What ways the government can do the allocation function? A lot of ways are there. Again, we don't have to go through them in detail. In general, what are the possible ways the government can perform its allocation function? Maybe it will directly produce the goods. Like for example, in India, railways, government itself is operating it. Or maybe it will influence the private allocation with incentives and disincentives. For example, electronic e-vehicles in India get a tax benefit. That's the way government is influencing the allocation of resources of the people and businesses, giving some incentives. Or maybe on the other side, let us say tobacco products are all priced very high and GST is charged very high. So that will disincentivize the producers also maybe to reduce the production. So it might influence. Once again, let us not get into the realities of whether that influence really happens or not. Once we go into that, that discussion will be endless. So let us not get into that. But in general, government may directly interfere, or it can influence through incentives or disincentives, or it can influence through certain laws, LAWS laws, acts. Like in India, we have Competition Act. So that gives the government power to stop any merger also if that merger is going to really create a monopolistic situation like that. So anti-monopolistic practices, competition encouragement practices, these are the things that governments will do. Not only in India, even in America, In USA also they have antitrust laws, which will act against any huge mergers if that merger is probably going to result in a kind of monopolistic situation. Just for example, imagination, it will not happen. Let us say Coca-Cola company and Pepsi-Cola company wanted to merge. I mean, if you really allow it, what it is going to do? What it is going to do is create the giant monopoly in the entire world, because there is nobody else who can just come near to that Coca-Cola and Pepsi put together. American government will not allow that. Then you may say, who is government to allow that? Yes, government is government. It is all powerful. It will not allow that. Antitrust laws will not allow that. That merger itself will be nullified. Even if required, maybe the American Senate will also pass a resolution saying that this merger of Coca-Cola and Pepsi-Cola is invalid. That much power government will interfere and influence when, if such kind of bad, too much of monopoly power the corporations are getting. This is again a different story. Does it mean there is no monopoly? There is monopoly in some cases. Government will not let that cross a limit. Definitely that is a job of a government, like a traffic constable. Not that traffic constable is going to stop everybody every time. If somebody is crossing the limits, definitely he will stop and ask for something. That is how government also acts like a regulator, one way we can say. And license controls, keeping minimum wages, etc., and directives on the location also will influence the resource allocation. And we see a lot of states within India offer a lot of incentives to the new industrialists if they come and invest in their state, what we are calling ease of doing business and all. That is also government's role only. Government, why government is interested in creating ease of doing business? I mean, if you think that way, what the hell government's role is, our job is to create ease of doing business. Government's job is to protect people and protect people's interests. That is why we have elected. We have not elected them to create ease of doing business. Common man may think like that, but that is wrong, because that is also government's job. Government does all these things through its allocation function and different instruments of creating policies, regulations, acts, legislations, and sometimes of incentivizing, disincentivizing. All these things the government will do through its legal, administrative framework, and any other mix of all these things the government will adopt in performing its allocation function. Now, another major point is also there here related to the market failures. Market failure is a very important aspect. Why the markets will fail? They may fail typically because of too many reasons, which we will discuss them in detail. Broadly speaking, there are four reasons we can say. One is the market power that it could lead to monopoly of very few firms, large firms, when compared with other firms. So presence of monopoly is one reason why the markets fail. Monopoly does not mean really there is only one person who is dominant, but almost majority of the market share is with very, very few people. That is also dangerous. For example, if you take Google now, almost it is monopoly. We cannot have any near competition to that. Again, that does not mean there is no alternate to it. There are so many alternatives to it, but the market share is majorly dominated by that. So government cannot allow generally just like that, whatever they do, it is okay. No, it is not okay. Recently, if at all we have seen the newspapers, even American Senate has called Google executives and grilled them. American Senate has interviewed and they almost grilled the Google executives. Zuckerberg was personally called by the American Senate. Again, these are big corporations, huge companies, CEOs and top executives we are talking about. And some senator, like one of our MPs, let us say, calls them and grills them. They will ask all the hard questions. They will ask them why this, why that, why that. That is a power. That is the power of the government. It should be there. Otherwise, market fails. That is what pure capitalist economy follows. Also, on contrary to the theoretical socialist economy where government does everything. So, completely leaving it to market or completely leaving it to government, both will be dangerous. So, in a way, we can say the entire world is mixed economy only. There is nothing called pure capitalism. There is nothing called pure socialism or communism anywhere, though the names people call themselves are different. So, government intervention, even in a pure capitalist economy, is inevitable. So, why that market failure happens is one, because of the monopoly power that is created, and markets generally fail to provide the common goods which are used by the public, called as public goods, and majorly externalities that the markets and industry creates. major, biggest externality, negative externality that they create is pollution. If you leave them, they will generate as much pollution as possible. They don't care about the world, and they don't care about nature and all. But somebody has to stop them. Somebody has to guide them or regulate them. Government has to do that. Who else will do that? Imperfect information is a very important reason because of which government intervention is also required. And factor immobility and inequalities in the distribution of income and wealth are the results of majorly market economy. So government has to interfere because of these things. Simply speaking, in one word, since market failure is inevitable, government intervention is also inevitable. That is the role of government in a nutshell, we can say. And moving on to the other functions of the government after the allocation function. Allocation function simply is like giving a land to one company. Lot of land was given to software companies in Hyderabad, Bangalore, etc. That was allocation function. Distribution function, we see this daily. Distribution function can be also called as redistribution function. Why redistribution? Because market also will distribute something, but the problem is there will be a lot of people who are left out from the distribution system of the market. The poor, the people who do not have any incomes, and they don't have food also. So what they will do? Should they die? Are we living in a human being society or a jungle? We are not in jungle. So we have to, means we the society have to support these poor people, wherein they are provided with some basic things, at least in India, like food. That government does. And we sometimes criticize that without knowing that is the role of the government. That is also unfortunate. But still, that is also the role of government. Forget about India, which is almost not even a developed country or a capitalist economy. We cannot call ourselves. We are still a mixed economy trying to become a capitalist economy. But really capitalist economy, really market economy, like America also gives food coupons to the poor people. There are a lot of people don't know that. They only talk about freebies being given to poor people in our country and some states. Some people are distributing taxpayers' money to the poor and all. Because that is the role of the government. If the government is doing that, be happy. That is what the government is supposed to do. It is supposed to collect the taxes from the people who can pay, and it is supposed to give the money or the benefits to the people who cannot afford the basic things. So that is the distribution function of the government. That is the role of the government. Even in America, there are food coupons given to the people. The people who do not have money or in basic income, they can get those food coupons and eat at any restaurants of their choice using those food coupons. There are dormitory facilities given to the people who do not have homes. And we are not talking any communist country or socialist country. We are talking the biggest capitalist country of the world, America. Why we have to take example of America? Because they are the ones who have told all these things to us. And also, being the market economy, they are the ones who are more vulnerable to the market failures also. Countries like European countries have done all this long back. They have become almost half socialistic countries because most of the welfare measures are already taken. Education is free, medical is free. All these things are already free there in most of the European countries. So we cannot call them pure capitalists anymore. But still, government intervention is inevitable, is what all these things will tell. And distribution function is the role of the government, irrespective of the type of economy, society, nature of politics, all these things apart. When there are poor people who cannot afford basic food also, it is our job collectively to give them that. That is distribution function. So we are not going to do that like a charity organization separately. That is individual level. But who has to do that? Whose job is that? Recently, like 5 kgs of rice, 1 kg of dal, something is announced. It's good, fantastic. It is to be announced, but it is not something that given as a benefit or extra thing. It is the role, it is the job. If I am doing my job, that's good. That's all. It is not great or something. So the point is, it is the job of the government, duty of the government to do this distribution function, wherein it has to ensure equity and fairness in the society so that it promotes the well-being of all sections of the people. Otherwise, this system will be chaotic. The system will be not balanced naturally. There will be so many people who have the money, and there will be so many people, most of them will not have any money to even meet their basic needs. That imbalance creates a social problem. So government has to stop that. How? At least throw some biscuits onto the people who have not access to any basic necessities. So that is why in India we have public distribution system is the biggest example. We have the PDS, public distribution system. wherein ration card are issued, ration cards are given. Anybody can just go to a ration card and a ration shop and get some basic food grains. This is there in place in India since decades. That is a role of the government distribution function. Very important role also. State government, central government, that is all discussion depend only related to particular case. But these roles are not of only Indian government. We are not talking about only Indian context. When we say EFF, economics for finance, is an international subject. So anywhere these concepts will apply. These are generic concepts applicable in any country and any government. So allocation function, distribution or redistribution function are the two major functions of government. After that, stabilization function also is another important function of the government. Why this function is required? Because of the business cycles, as we discussed earlier. Allocation function and redistribution functions are microeconomic functions. Allocation to whom the government is making, one company, maybe one individual, like that. But distribution to whom the government is giving money or food or rice or wheat to individuals, that is also microeconomic. Now, stabilization function is not like something like directly targeted with some people or companies. So it is a macroeconomic function. It is going to try to reduce the effects of the business cycles. Try to reduce the effects of the business cycles. When the economy is in a bad condition, government must intervene and do stabilization function. Simply speaking, in the recent terms, it cannot sit back and say it is just act of God and I cannot do anything. You have to do something. That is why you are government. You have to do the stabilization function when the performance of the aggregate economy is not good. Employment rate, capital utilization, overall output and income, general price levels, international payments, each of the things has to be closely monitored by the government. That is the job of the government. Any government in the world has to do that. And they have to intervene and stabilize the economy if there is a problem. Why government? When there is a problem only there is government required. When everything is good, government is not required. Market will take care of itself. At the time of the problems and recessions in these business cycles, definitely the government has to intervene and do some stabilization function. Of course, it does with some of the policies, normally, regularly, fiscal policies of the government, monetary policies of the Reserve Bank of India, they are all part of it, macroeconomic functions, no doubt in that. But that is different. When normally this happens, it is different. Shocks are different. In the case of shocks, which is not going to happen normally, then the government's role also will become more and more. That is what we have seen recently from this corona pandemic. That is a lesson that can be learned. Shock like this can shake the entire government's infrastructure and ability to really react and do the things properly. But yes, these are things that we learn and move on. Maybe in future, if the similar things happen, lessons from what we learned now can be used to react at least in a better manner in future. But normally business cycles, that is a common. Those are not shocks. Normally ups, downs, these are common. That happens in any economy. So government definitely has to do its part to reduce the effect of this business cycles. It cannot let the business cycles go like this too much. That should be a little bit stabilized. Like the doctors say, ECG should be like this only. It cannot be like this. If it is ECG like this, the person is dead. There will be ups and downs. There is nothing wrong with that. There will be ups and downs. But how much? Too much is dangerous. That government should not allow. That is what is stabilization function of the government. And it will intervene broadly through two things. Broadly, because this is a macroeconomic function, broadly the government intervention will be on two different ways. One is called fiscal policy by the central government in India itself, and the second one is called monetary policy in India, that is handled by Reserve Bank of India. Both of them we will discuss in the part of public finance and also the part of money market of this subject. Now moving on to the market failure, as we just now discussed, markets, if left to themselves, they fail. They fail. Either they do overproduction or underproduction. They will not do optimal allocation of resources, and ultimately the outcome will be suboptimal. Suboptimal means less than optimal. And this also we have just now identified. What are the reasons for market failure? One is market power. Market power is nothing but monopoly power. Few corporations becoming more powerful and they are not allowing a competition from the small players. Possible. Government cannot allow that. It has to somehow stop that. That is one thing. Then externalities is a very important concept. So public goods is not market failure. Failure of market to provide public goods is market failure. Incomplete information is common in markets. That also leads to market failure. So these are each of the factors very important which lead to market failure. Market powers is something that we discussed already, which is related to monopoly power or power of few companies or one or two companies which exert too much of influence on the market when compared with their competitors. So that is the market power. Then an important aspect of externalities, if we understand, these can be called as side effects or spillover effects or third party effects. What does it mean? If you understand the concept, that is enough. And the definitions and the words you definitely have to write from the ICA material, that is different story. As a simple understanding of what is externality, it is something that one person does and the impact of whatever that person has done is on the another person. So what bad thing is actually performed by one person. If he himself is bearing the problem with that, then there is not externality. He did something wrong. He died. Let us say somebody has climbed a 10-floor building and jumped. He died. He acted something wrong thing and he committed suicide. He died. That is not externality much. Okay, it may create some blood and all in the locality. It might create some fear and all. That is okay, small externality. But he is responsible for what he has done, which is wrong. He is not having a huge impact on the others. But on the other side, if somebody is like, let us say, sitting in a bus and smoking, or somebody sitting in a train along with all passengers and smoking, or somebody sitting in a cinema theater and smoking, is in public places, somebody is smoking. He is not only causing harm to himself, of course, he is doing that anyway. In addition to that, he is causing inconvenience and even harm to the others. So the others are getting the side effects without their intervention. They did not have any role in that, but still problem comes to them only. That is the simple understanding of externalities. Of course, negative externalities. But will all externalities be negative only? No. Sometimes externalities could be positive also. Sometimes they could be negative also. What are the positive externalities? Again, there could be two categories of that. There could be positive production externalities and there could be positive consumption externalities. What are the positive production externalities? Name itself indicates the externalities which are generated in the process of production, which are going to give a benefit to the others, are positive production externalities. And consumption externalities will be caused by some people when they are consuming them, but it is creating a positive impact on others. Let us say if somebody is taking vaccines, it is consuming vaccine, but he is stopping the spread of a disease. He is actually helping the others also, indirectly, not directly. That is why it is externality. So that is a positive consumption externality, taking vaccine. Same way, if a factory is there in a particular city or a place, or a company is there, or a corporation is there, it is training its employees. It is doing research and development. That is all positive production externality. And that is all happening when they are producing, not when they are consuming. So production externalities are those which are resulting in the production process. Consumption externalities are those which are resulting in the consumption process, as the name indicates. And when we say positive, those are good things. And when we say negative, those are bad things. Negative production externality, the biggest negative externality is pollution. Any factory, any development, everybody wants development, everybody wants all the comforts, luxuries, but we don't want pollution. That is not possible. There will be pollution. There will be negative production externality linked to development, like pollution. We want power also 24/7. We want air conditioners, everything, but we don't want thermal power plant. We don't want nuclear power plant. That is not possible. But yes, I'm not saying that those who don't want it, they never said they don't want power. They don't want it in their area because it causes pollution. They know that. So negative production externalities are linked to the production process, which cause definitely bad effects onto the others. Who is manufacturing? The thermal power plant. Negative effect is on whom? All the people around that plant. So that is a negative production externality. Biggest one, most classic example of that is pollution. Negative consumption externality, as we already just now discussed, that is the biggest or classic example we can say. Smoking is the biggest negative consumption externality. They are causing a negative externality by consuming something bad like tobacco or Somebody consumes alcohol and goes to office. He consumed for himself, but he might create the entire atmosphere at the office in a bad manner. So those are consumption negative externalities. There will be negative production externalities also. But however, normally in real life, when we talk about externalities, generally we don't talk or think much about positive externalities. We think about negative externalities only, because those are the side effects that are caused by somebody, impact of which is on somebody else. So that is the externalities concept. Positive externalities confer benefits on other party. Negative externality imposes costs on the other party, as the name itself indicates. And we discussed all this. What is a positive production externality? What is a positive consumption externality? What is a negative production externality? And negative consumption externality. Each of them can be asked as a question. Now, within the context of externalities, the difference between private cost and social cost is also important. Normally, a person who is causing externality will only think of private cost. But the problem is, it will not only just cost him, it will cost the society also, which is not quantified, which is not measurable sometimes. Even if it is measurable, it is difficult to attribute it to the person who has really caused that social cost. Imagine there is a thermal power plant and it is manufacturing electricity, which is its job. It is doing that well. And the cost of production, all of that, they will calculate using all the costing, management accounting, financial management, accounting, all the things we only do. Full cost, they will calculate. Fantastic. Well, but what about the social cost that they have created? The people who are around this thermal power plant are drinking polluted water. The people who are around this plant are breathing polluted air, and they might be having a lot of lungs issues, they might be having a lot of health issues, and they will go to doctors and they will have a lot of medical bills. First of all, so many crores of rupees people around this factory might be spending on their medical bills, which they would not have spent if this factory was not there. Means what? This entire additional medical cost that is passed on to the people is solely through this power plant, let us say. Will the power plant account for all those costs also? No, it will not. Because for them, it is not the cost, it is somebody else's cost. So I don't care. That is what happens. And normally the organizations and market will consider only private costs, ignoring social cost. That is a very dangerous scenario. But of course, government somehow should make sure they should consider the social cost also, not just the private cost. So simply, what is social cost is nothing but private cost anyway, plus the external cost or external damage that they are causing. That is social cost. But once again, a lot of problems are there here. Can we quantify that social cost? Can we quantify that external cost? Difficult. Can we attribute really everything to this? That is also very difficult. That is not exactly possible to attribute also to them. Of course, countries in developing countries like ours, we may not even imagine that. But earlier, around 30, 40 years back, 50 years back, a lot of people, the people who are smokers, they have sued the tobacco manufacturing companies Marlboro and all that. They sued them and they won the cases, telling that, these people sold me cigarettes, that is why I smoked, that is why I got cancer. So give me compensation. Companies were gone mad. How many people, everybody will get cancer, then how the company will be able to give all the compensation to everybody? So then they started publishing all this, it causes cancer, don't consume, all these things. Because the social cost caused by that is much higher than the private cost what the manufacturer was incurring. Even the people who are consuming it were also incurring. Somebody might have bought it for, let us say, $10, but the real social cost that he is generating on himself and others also is much higher than that, which is not taken into consideration. Normally, not possible to attribute it also. So that is the problem, other side of it. But definitely, when there is a negative externality, social cost will be more than private cost. When there is a positive externality, social cost will be less than private cost. And when there are negative externalities, there is a loss of welfare due to social cost being more than, this is marginal social cost, this is marginal private cost. Since this social cost is more than the private cost, it causes a loss of welfare. That is the impact of externalities. Now moving on to the second aspect of market failure and reason for it. For that, we have to understand two types of goods, private goods and public goods. So what are the private goods and public goods? So many characteristics are there for private goods. Usually for private goods, what are the characteristics? One must purchase them 100%. And whenever somebody purchases, they can have private property rights. Let us say if you purchased a pizza, you purchased a burger or something, you have the property right on. You only can eat that. You have the right on that at least. So whatever you purchase, whatever we purchase, you purchased a pair of shoes, you have right on that shoes. Somebody else cannot come and say it is my shoes. It is your shoes because you purchased. That's a private good. So simultaneous consumption of rivalrous good by more than one person is impossible. Rivalrous good, simultaneous consumption. Let us say same example. You are wearing your shoes. Can somebody else wear the same shoes at the same time? Not possible. So that's a clear example of private goods. Are they excludable? Yes, they are possible to be excluded because you could afford. You bought those shoes. There are thousands of people, crores of people who cannot afford. Those are all excluded from that good because they could not pay money to buy that shoes. So they are excludable. And they do not have a free rider problem. Definitely, you are not going to leave your shoes outside very everywhere. Anybody can just like that use and happily roam around. No, you will only have it. Maybe you have a shoe stand and have a chappal stand in which you will put them. So you only can use that. Nobody else can use that. Free rider problem is not there. That is another feature of private goods. And it is also possible to refer to the total consumption as the sum of each individual consumption. That is what is individual demand and market demand. Individual demand of each of the persons. Add all of that. Naturally, you get market demand. That is what private goods can be quantified, the demand of them. And same way, they can be rejected by the consumers also according to their needs, preferences, and budgets. That is possible. And also, when we look at the distribution and supplying of the additional quantities of private goods, additional resources will be costing, and some buyers can be excluded. Again, same things are almost getting repeated. These are the things. And markets will efficiently allocate resources for the production of private goods. Markets will not be having any problem with private goods because they know they are money making, profit making. They will manufacture shampoos, soaps, shoes, cloths, everything, whatever we use, wear, eat, everything is manufactured by the market. Fantastic. Distributed, fantastic. Properly priced, allocation of resources are super. Everything happens fantastic. That is generally what markets do when it comes to private goods. Maybe just for imagination purposes, when was the last time when you went to a shop and asked for a shampoo and he said there is no stock of shampoos? Brand apart. Never happens like that. It will be there. Market will be so fantastically aware that it has to make sufficient stock available. In a lot of rural villages now, maybe water may not be there, Coca-Cola available, pakka available. So no problem. Market makes sure the distribution, production of these private goods happens in a fantastic manner because that is the way they get money. That is the profit making mechanism. That is market. So problem is not with that. That is not what causes market failure. What causes market failure is market fail to provide public goods. What are public goods? These are collective consumption goods or social goods because these are the ones which all the individuals enjoy in common. Let us take the example of a street light. That is the best thing we can say. Street light is there. Street light is a public good. Anybody can just like that enjoy. Somebody cannot say the street light should illuminate me only. Other people cannot see the illumination of street light. Not possible. A small road, let us say, it is a public good. A park, public park, open park is a public good. Is any company or any other manufacturer or any other private market player has ever constructed a road for public? Why should he construct? Nobody does that. Has anybody constructed a private park or some public park which is available and open to anybody? Open, free? No, nobody has done that. So they don't do. Nobody or market will not be interested in providing public goods because these are collective consumption goods or social goods. That is the nature of public goods. And they yield utility to the people whose consumption is especially collective in nature and mostly no direct payment by the consumer is involved. If it is a pure public good, it is free, simply speaking. It is free. That is the nature of public good. Then, public goods are non-rival in consumption. Same example, street light you can say. If two people are walking below the street light, is one person getting more light than the other person? No. They are not competing with each other. They are not competing with each other. There is no rivalry between them in enjoying the benefits of this public good. So they are non-rival in nature. And they are non-excludable. You cannot say somebody cannot actually even take the illumination from the street light. Pure public goods we are talking. They are non-excludable. They cannot be excluded or exclusively provided only to few people. Nobody can be excluded from the consumption benefits. Let us say there is a lighthouse. Lighthouse will be giving light to all the ships which are there in the sea. You cannot say I will give only lighting to few ships selectively. No, not like that. Or on the other side, let us say another classic example, military giving services to only few people. No, it cannot. It cannot restrict or exclude anybody. It is going to definitely save the country, means that is saving the entire country. Everybody in the country is getting the services from our brave soldiers. So that is not excludable. That is a pure public good, and that is indivisible also. Indivisibility once again can be taken from the street light example or a park example or any other pure public goods. And they are more vulnerable to the issues like externalities, inadequate property rights, and most importantly, free rider problems. That is the other side of public goods. Because of inadequate property rights, because nobody is there to really claim the property of that. It is belonging to everybody. Everybody misuses. That is why people throw garbage on the streets, not keeping in their homes. Natural, because that is a free rider problem. That is a road is a public good for them. They don't care about it. It is not a private good for them. So that is the other side of it, the problems with public good. Anyway, in general, we can have this 2 by 2 matrix that sums up everything about all these goods. If they are rivalrous and excludable, then they are private goods. Simple cars, bikes, shoes, what we took as examples, these are all excludable also, rivalrous also. When you are wearing shoes, at the same time, nobody else can wear the same shoes. That is rivalrous. Excludable, only people who buy them can only use them. That is excludable. And there are some rivalrous goods which are non-excludable also. Those are called common access resources, like natural resources. These are the common access resources like forest resources, coal, petroleum. Of course, they are made excludable also by the governments. That's a different story. But by nature, they are not excludable. By nature, they are not excludable. Anybody can just go and fish in the sea. That's fine. But if one person is going and actually fishing in one area in the sea, automatically, if he catches too much of fish in that area, if another person goes and does the fishing in the same area, he might not get the same amount of fish because already it was consumed or taken out by other person. So it becomes rivalrous. That is why it is rivalrous and non-excludable. That is the nature of common access resources. Then non-rivalrous but excludable. Non-rivalrous but excludable. For example, these are all what are called club goods. Cinema theaters are the best example. You are enjoying the movie. When you are watching the movie in a cinema theater, is it stopping somebody to enjoy the movie also at the same time? No. Everybody can enjoy the same movie at the same time. So they are non-rivalrous. There is no competition among the people. Everybody can enjoy in their own way. Those are club goods. Private parks, cinemas, satellite television, even unfortunately education also is a club good where anybody can have their own non-rivalrous enjoying of the service, but it could be excludable by prescribing a fee for it. Some money is to be paid. Then it is a non-rivalrous excludable type of commodity, which can also be called as club goods. And the other things what we just now discussed are pure public goods, which are non-rivalrous also, non-excludable also. That is a classification of various types of goods, and all of them are given here in description also once again. Pure private goods, common resource goods, club goods, and pure public goods. And there is a small other discussion also related to pure and impure public goods also. There are certain type of impure public goods also, wherein there might be some bit of congestion, but they are public goods and they could be also sometimes excludable. So quasi-public goods are the public goods which are nearly having all the qualities of the private goods, but the benefits of public good are also there. Like education is almost the best one, we can say everybody should get the benefit of, but unfortunately it has the qualities of a private good. Why? Because it is non-rivalrous but excludable. It has become like a impure public good or a partly private, partly public good, quasi-public good, whatever we can say. That is the nature of impure public goods, we can say. And both are impure only. Common access resources are also impure, as well as club goods are also impure. And One more discussion on this is global public goods, which are related to the entire world. This is an important question also. Just to have to write these points only. What are the global public goods according to the World Bank? Environmental commons, communicable diseases. Let us say Telangana government is doing this Harita Haram, something like that, or somewhere else Amma Chettu Niru, something programs are conducted everywhere. So what happens is a lot of greenery is being created by planting the small plants and all. That is not only adding to the state or country, that is a good thing for the entire world actually. So that's an environmental common. So if we do good thing also, bad thing also, entire earth could be affected. So those are global public goods. Communicable diseases, we are in the middle of that coronavirus. If let us say some vaccine is invented, is it only for one country or one person who has invented? Is he going to inject himself only and be safe? No, that is going to be spread throughout the world. Like the virus has spread, vaccine will also spread. So vaccine is a global public good. Virus is not a public good, it's a bad good. Vaccine definitely is a public good. International trade is a global public good. International financial architecture and global knowledge is also important global public goods according to World Bank. And free rider problem is one more important feature of public goods which they suffer from. Because free rider problem means what? When the public good is there, everybody will think that because it is free, I will use it, somebody else will pay for it because he is not paying for it. He thinks that I can just use it. Somebody else will come and clean it. Somebody else will pay it. Somebody else will actually take responsibility of this. I don't have to worry about it. That's what everybody tries to do. So when free riding problem is there, they are not bothered about the entire collective benefit of the society. They become selfish. And mostly when they do this, in the case of public goods only, they do this. In the case of private goods, in the case of goods which are excluded, especially with a fees or something, generally people don't do that. In case of a public good, they think they can do anything. Let the other people pay price for something of their actions also, they don't care. Such kind of situation created in the public goods is called as free rider problem. So these are the three aspects of market failure: market power, which is monopoly power; externalities, having lot of types, negative, positive, production, consumption, etc. Then public goods, private goods is another important point. And why the markets fail in all this? Markets fail in all this because they never care to provide public goods, because the public goods suffer from free rider problem. They don't give them profits at all. So markets do not provide public goods. Government has to provide public goods. So that is why, though it has the characteristic of an impure or a quasi-public good, most of the countries, developed countries, provide education and health facilities free to their citizens, free completely. Because that is the reason why markets fail. Markets do not provide sufficient education. We may think that so many schools are there, but that is not education. That is all nonsense. Actual education, markets do not provide. They don't provide proper health services to the people. They government schools, government colleges, government universities, government hospitals are required. Government has to interfere there because markets will fail in providing all these good things like health, education, quasi-public goods like that, or even normal public goods like parks or roads or infrastructure and all. Government itself will have to provide. Private players by themselves cannot provide. Of course, it's a different story. Now we have this model of public-private partnership called PPP, wherein both government and private players are working together and making a profitable proposition out of a public good also. Something like, let us say, metro train or a flyover or a national highway. Each of them have toll or some fees. They become excludable. We cannot call them pure public goods. Almost they have become club goods, where the service provider, whether it is, let us say, GMR having a toll booth on the national highway, or whether it is Larsen and Toubro operating metro, say in Hyderabad or Bangalore, they are getting money. So because of that, they are doing that. They are not just doing for public service. No private organization will do, should do also, need to do also any such kind of service. They do it for business, simply profits. But because of government support and because of the government's promise to ensure some revenue to them, they enter into the public-private partnership and put together they are doing it, which is almost one way we can say the solution that we have taken out of the demand for good public goods, but still inability of the government itself to provide and inability of the government to fund itself to provide all this have resulted in PPP model. That is a more practical solution of mixing the private goods and public goods. And also that is a problem to solve the free rider problem also. In metro or in some other places like that, largely there will not be free rider problem. There will be some bit of discipline when compared with other places. So that is the nature of markets and governments in the third category. And the fourth category is that is related to imperfect information, we can say. Imperfect information can have three different scenarios. One is asymmetric information, which means either the buyer knows more than the seller or the seller knows more than the buyer. Let us say if somebody is selling his second-hand car to others, what the seller will tell? He will tell, oh, this is fantastic car, this was maintained very well, all services done properly, never in life accident happened, not a scratch on that, like that he will tell. He knows already he would have done 4 accidents. He will not tell the buyer. He knows more information than the buyer. So that is asymmetric information. When the seller knows more than the buyer. Sometimes the buyer knows more than the seller also. That is also asymmetric information. So one time it was said that one farmer got one stone while he was plowing in his field, and he got something of kind of stone, and he thought it is nothing. But later sometime somebody from the city came and bought it for some like 1,000 rupees or 5,000 rupees. And the other person who bought it for 5,000 rupees used it as a paperweight on his office table because he also liked that because it was a little bit shiny and all. Then somebody else came and bought it for 20,000 rupees, sold it for 2 crores rupees because he only knows that it is diamond. Other people did not know it was diamond. Buyer knows that it is diamond. Seller does not know what it is. Happens. So asymmetric information is common. Seller knows something sometimes more than buyer. Buyer knows sometimes more than seller. So naturally there is no equilibrium between them. Who has to ensure? Government. Government has a role. It cannot say I will not interfere and all. You take care of yourselves. No. Sellers and buyers are not equal stature. Always. Not necessarily always. So government definitely has to have its own intervention into this asymmetric information and make sure information is available to all in transparent manner. And because of asymmetric information, sometimes people do adverse selection because people don't know. People generally are fools. They're bakra actually. They're sheep. They just follow what others are following and automatically what they do. Because others are doing, I will also do this. Other is doing, I will also do it. And they do adverse selection. Lot of times it so happens, a fantastic product, very good quality product also will flop in the market because of most of the people not buying it since they don't have information about it, and they have all the information about a horrible useless product because that product advertises more, because people buy that product which advertises more without knowing the reality of that product, without knowing whether that works or not. None of these things matter to them. They just keep on buying those things where the advertisement is more. Because of this, what happens? The problem is not that you buy whatever you want to buy. That is not a problem. The problem is because of this, the good quality products will be sent out of the market. There will be no motivation for the really good people to produce quality products because anyway people are not consuming. Means people, we are all part of that. When I say you, it's not just you, everybody including me. We are not consuming good things like adverse selection. Live example, we can say news channels. People are all watching nonsensical news daily. What happened there, what happened here, interview, somebody's court case. This is all news and everybody is very interested in that. Nothing wrong. You are entertained by that. You watch that. If I am entertained, I will watch that. But what happens because of that? Journalists will be not there in future. There will not be journalists left in this country. There will be no news left in this country. There will be only some entertainment programs in the name of news channels. That is a live example as we are going through. Adverse selection people are doing. We are all the people in that bakra, and we become bakra ultimately. And our right to get a quality journalistic news program is lost. And who will be at last? We only will be at last. But we don't know. We are innocent. We are normal people. So what happens? Because the person who is giving us the shit knows that very well. Ki he is not actually giving any good information or something. But in spite of that, because of his information more than our information, because of his knowledge more than our knowledge, he will keep on pushing that, and we take it. And then over a period of time, the quality people will get out. Happens. That is what happens, and that is what is going to happen also, unfortunately. And it happened in many countries. It's not that only in India it is happening. It happens, keep on happening. Adverse selection is the biggest danger when people do not have proper information, when people are not knowledgeable, educated enough to take judgment correctly. That impacts them only, because the real people who are working hard, real people who are actually contributing to the society will be demotivated. And what they will do, the real good people, they can do something else also. Maybe if some person is not able to do good journalism in a Indian news channel, if he is talented, he will go somewhere else. He might go to another country and become a journalist, no problem. Or maybe he can become a writer, or some other movie industry will join, whatever he can do. But who lost? Society lost. That is a problem with adverse selection. Government has to control this. Government has to make this asymmetric information symmetric. Of course, it's a different story. Lot of times, the governments not only not only just avoid to interfere, but actually they will also make the people to take adverse selection because it is in their interest. Most of the times, it so happens. But once again, that is a different line of thought. But this is a dangerous thing because of the asymmetric information that happens. Moral hazard is something else which is personal, more or less, we can say, more than the public problem. Adverse selection is a public problem. Moral hazard is a more or less personal problem. When one person takes the advantage of the other person, when the other person does not know something, is a moral hazard. I mean, just for example, I'm telling, don't take it otherwise. These things happened, we read long back, maybe 15, 20 years back. Let us say some lady goes to a hypnotist for some psychological problems, a psychologist, let us say. And that psychologist might hypnotize her and maybe take advantage of her, maybe do some sexual harassment on her. That is a moral hazard. He knows that after hypnotism, he is going to do this wrong thing. That lady or the patient does not know. Maybe after even coming out of the session also, she does not know what happened. So that is a big thing, moral hazard. That is like basically the character of the person. When nobody is watching what we are, that is what is character of the person. And that will be also changing in the societies. And why this all happens, one person having information, another person not having information. We have so many fools who believe all this, definitely, who just go there and think that normally any of the problems can be solved with hypnotism, sometimes with some kind of tayat, tavid, some whatever, some small metal piece, whatever it is, belief we call it. For us, it is belief. We are okay. Problem is not from our side. The people who are selling it, 200% know they are all selling just nothing. They know that. They know that. So that is moral hazard. They don't have any morals. They don't have any actual real character or positive character to give some good thing. So they just take opportunity in the foolishness of ours. So our foolishness is their opportunity, as simple as that. That situation also will be there in the society. It is natural. Once again, when these things happen, who has to wake up, who has to control, who has to make the people informed, who has to keep the people safe, from falling for all these problems? Who are the ones who have to make people not to take adverse selection? Who are the ones to make people that if moral hazard, if you are doing, you are going to be punished? Who has to do that? Government definitely has. So that is where markets, if left, oh, they will tell anything. I'll just give an example in actual advertisement that I saw. Not now. Advertisement I saw, no, but that was published somewhere in 1930s. 1930 advertisement, Coca-Cola advertisement says, this is a tonic for headaches. That was Coca-Cola advertisement. They were selling like that initially. Coca-Cola was a tonic for headaches. If you are feeling headache, if you are feeling dizzy, have Coca-Cola and you enjoy. Like that they were giving. Can they do that now? People will laugh. But they did it. They already did all these things. So how they stopped? People will believe. If tomorrow somebody says Coca-Cola is going to act like a medicine for coronavirus, people will start drinking that. People will believe everything. Whatever, because they are weak, they are not informed, less informed. Who has to stop this? Government has to stop this. Government cannot allow the advertisers or the companies, as per their whims and fancies, all the lies and all they cannot spread. Government should interfere and stop this asymmetric information. That is also the role of the government. So market failure happens because of four things. Automatically, government intervention also happens because of those market failures. How it will interfere, that is a different story. But of course, the objective of the government intervention is just opposite. Minimize market power, correct externalities, provide merit goods and discourage demerit goods, correct the information failure, and ultimately resulting in equitable distribution of wealth and incomes so that welfare of the society is maintained. Again, we are not talking any political lessons here. This is the role of any government, irrespective of the nature of the economy, irrespective of the nature of the system of government also. That is the role of the government, according to the economists, according to all these theories that we are looking at. So how the government will minimize the market power? So many things that it can do. Classic examples in India are Competition Act is a way where it tries to minimize the market power. Okay, whether it really happens in India or not is a different story. But yes, these are the points that you should write when government intervenes to minimize the market power. And government itself will have some control on the electricity. For example, electricity prices cannot be fixed according to the whims and fancies of the providers. There is a control mechanism on that. So a lot of times there will be a prices also fixed, maximum prices, cap price we can call it. Pricing also is fixed, ceiling we can call it. Things cannot go. People cannot price something beyond it. Just you take cinemas only. Nowadays that is also all going out. Like a particular movie will have too much demand on the first day. Earlier, people used to sell black tickets. Ticket was 50 rupees. People used to sell for 500 rupees, 1000 rupees like that. Why is that? Why not the theater itself will put a price of 1000 rupees and sell officially? Because government will not allow. That is against the law. So illegally people had to do. Now actually good thing or bad thing, what is happening is government itself is allowing. So first day, even if the theater or the producer puts 1000 rupees also, nobody is there to stop. Is it increasing the market power? No. Government wants to give more market power to people. That's a different story. That is pro-business, ease of doing business, whatever you can call it. But for a developing economy, it is okay. For a developed economy, already these people will be so powerful. The monopoly power of them has to be controlled by the government. That is one thing. And government has to also intervene into correct the externalities. How it will correct the externalities, how the government intervention could be. It could be in different ways. It could be direct also, indirect also. Directly, how the government will intervene into the market as a supplier and as a buyer. As I said already, government is the biggest buyer in any country, any country. There will not be any one buyer who is bigger than government. For goods also or services also. Supplier, not much, not for all of them. At least in India, railways, government is a supplier. Defense equipments and all, government is a supplier. Or for that matter, education, though not completely, but yes, government still has a lot of supply in that service, health services. Their government is acting like supplier itself. So that is direct intervention. Indirect intervention could be in the form of taxes or subsidies. Taxes are to reduce the demand by increasing the cost. Subsidies are to increase the demand by reducing the cost. So ultimately, to alter the cost, it is in the hands of the government, either to tax a product. For example, tobacco products are taxed high, and electric vehicles are taxed low, and subsidies are given actually, not even taxed. So that is the policy of the government. Indirectly, government intervenes into the market like that. And regulation and influence is anyway there. In India, there is no kami for it. It is like abundant of laws we have, what not we have. So many acts, that act, this act, pollution acts, employment acts, what not we have, labor laws, tax laws, corporate laws. There is no limit for them. So it is all indirect intervention of the government only into the market, which it has to do, and it is doing that. So that is about intervention of the government. And how the government intervention to correct externalities can happen is, one is pollution taxes. That means when pollution taxes are levied by the government, there will be more cost added to the private cost. So the one who is more polluting will have to pay more pollution tax. So what was the original problem with these negative externalities we thought earlier? Earlier, social cost was more than the private cost. So what the government tries to do somehow to bridge this gap is, it will include the social cost also in the private cost by adding pollution tax to the people who are doing more pollution. So now what happened? Private cost increased of the manufacturers. That means though it is not equal to social cost, at least some portion of the external cost is internalized. That is the internalization of external cost, we can say. One of the ways is pollution taxes. Second way is tradable emission permits. Not much popular in India, very popular in Europe. America never cares about pollution and all anyway. At least now. Future we don't know. After November only we'll know. Right now, these tradable emission permits are all very popular in Europe and all. In India, we know this. If at all you heard the name, carbon credits is an example of that. So what happens here is government gives permits to pollute only to some extent. If somebody has polluted more than that, he needs to buy more permits. If somebody has polluted less than the limit prescribed, then he can sell the permits what he has. Just without example, not really that we can measure it. Let us say 100 is the number of units somebody got from the government as licensed pollution allowed. If somebody has only polluted 80, that means he still has 20 left. That 20 he can sell. Or somebody has polluted, let us say 120, who has polluted more, but he has permission for only 100. So what he will do? He will buy this 20 from the less polluted person. So what happened here simply is there is a monetary incentive to the person who is polluting less, and there is a punishment to the person or a burden to the person who is polluting more. So indirectly that will also have an overall negative impact over a period of time. But that's a reasonably sophisticated system, not much possible also to actually implement in countries like India. Yes, but still we are trying. Carbon credits is there. Concept of carbon credits is there in India. Carbon credit is that number which is allowed level of permissible pollution. If you have more carbon credits than what you exhausted by actually polluting, those carbon credits can be sold. That is what is tradable pollution permits, we can say. This is a way of correcting the externalities. And we know already, normally also we can understand how the government intervention happens in case of merit goods, like education and all, healthcare. Government itself will provide sometimes. So that is one thing. That is the intervention of the government. Or even government can have other things like regulation, legislation, subsidies, etc. If whatever the intervention we see, it will fall in these categories only. Only the application changes. Either government will do something directly or indirectly. Either this can happen to anything. This can be in the case of merit goods. This can be in the case of externalities. Whatever the government responds to, any of these market failures will be in the broad four categories only. If that is known, we can apply it everywhere. That is a common Jinda Talismat for all the things that government intervention does. More market power is there, no problem. Government, you start manufacturing. Or let us say public goods people are not providing, education is not provided. No problem. You start school, you start colleges, government will start. Like that. Or sometimes government will encourage or discourage the people to either produce more or produce less. So simply speaking, on a broader basis, government encourages the merit goods and discourages the demerit goods. Demerit goods, how it will discourage? Maybe it can completely ban them. Like for example, in India, narcotics and all are banned completely, and pan parag and all, like what is this, gutkas and all, those are banned, at least legally speaking. So these are like government interventions only. Otherwise, somebody can say, if you go beyond this thought process, who is government? Who is government to tell us what to do, what not to do, eat this, don't eat this, smoke this, don't smoke this, drink this, don't drink this? Who are they? In one state, there is an alcohol ban. In another state, there is no ban. In one state, there is one rule. In another state, another rule. Who are these people? Government. This is a common man thing. Sorry, who are these people to tell us? We have to understand it is the all-powerful thing called government. Government is all-powerful, whether at state level or central level, according to the powers conferred onto them by the Constitution of India. They are the ones who are ruling us. We have to understand. Though we elected them, they rule us, not us ruling them. So whatever the powers they have, they can use them. Objectives are ultimately this. Objectives are to encourage the merit goods, discourage the demerit goods. Government cannot say, I will leave it to the people, let them decide whatever they want to consume. No, that is not the role of the government. Government has to intervene. Again, only changes what is, to what level of intervention. Somewhere complete ban, or sometimes maybe they will charge too much of tax, so that the cost of that will be so high, price of that will be so high, that the demand will become lesser. If that is the objective, once again, not necessarily that will be really achieved. There are problems also in all these things. Everything that we are looking at in a intention wise good thing from the government can backfire also. can have bad intention also with this mask, or even it can have side effects also. All those practical things are different. We are not looking at them. Once again, we have to look at the theoretical aspects of these words. What are merit goods? What are demerit goods? What government will do to encourage merit goods, and what government will do to discourage demerit goods? That's what it will do. And in case of public goods also, the government will be providing directly, and it will be providing goods to the public sometimes, and it will finance also sometimes through entry fees. Like for example, we have National Highway Authority of India having a toll booth. Government is but still it is charging them. Same way, there may be a park, public park. There may be a small charge on that, entry fees on that, so that it is made little bit excludable. Otherwise, free rider problem will be much more. You leave a public park completely open to everybody without any fees, and see it after 2 years, or have a public park with at least 5 rupees, 10 rupees fees, and see it after let us say 1 year or 2 years. Then there will be a lot of difference, because the one which is open to all would have been already occupied by the antisocial elements, and a lot of bad things might be happening there. And the one which was having a particular, at least a bit of entry fees, would be reasonably maintained better. That is what is the nature of public goods, and government will have to do its job to provide them as much as possible to the public, which are good. But in order to make them excludable, they may charge an entry fees. That is one more thing. And what are the price interventions of the governments? This is one thing which is already going on now as a hot topic in India, MSP. That is a live example of that, minimum support price. Who is the government to fix that price? If logically speaking, who are there to fix that price? But yes, once again, the answer is same. They are government, they are powerful, they are supposed to do that. They are supposed to fix that price. When certain essential commodities are having highest prices, if they are going up, then government has to put a price ceiling. And if there is something like agricultural products where the price is too low and farmers income might fall below their even cost, then government has to support by giving a floor price. So this is common. This is not something that happens only in India. It is common everywhere in the world. Even in America, the subsidies given to the farmers are unbelievable. The so-called capitalist country. Forget about China and all. Anyway, they claim themselves to be communist country, though they are not. Even in the capitalist countries like America and a lot of European countries, the farmers are supported. They are not left to the market. They know how the markets fail because they experienced that. Now we are new. We are so obsessed with market. Okay, let the market take care of itself. All these things we are trying. We will learn lesson, no problem. Let us see what happens. Hope for the good. What happens, we don't know. The point is, government's job is not to go away from market. Government's job is to keep a track on the market and make sure that price controls are working. Whether it is a ceiling price, for example, something like Rent Control Act is there. Some landlord cannot collect a rent more than some amount from the tenant. Why? Because government stops that. Government stops somebody exploiting the other person. That is the job of the government. That is a ceiling price, we can say. On the other side, floor price is that which is given like MSP. So classic example of the minimum price that is given is called minimum support price to the farmers that happens in India. Why this is all done? Because there should be some stability in prices and distribution. Governments have to intervene in the markets, particularly in India. Grain markets, food products markets, government keeps on intervening with this ceiling or floor prices. That is the job of the government. It has to do that. And sometimes, as we discussed, direct intervention also government will do. Government itself will purchase. If the farmers are not able to sell to others, then government itself has to come forward and purchase. It does that. Again, whether state or central doesn't matter. But government's role is definitely to make sure the prices are stably maintained, distribution is happening more or less equitably, if not equally, and justice prevails. That is what the government has to do. It cannot just say hands up and I will leave it to the market, let the market decide. That is not a good thing, particularly when it comes to certain areas like agriculture or agricultural produce. And many countries do that. We are trying something new. Let us see what happens. That is a different discussion. But point again, we have to understand in all these things is daily, whatever we see, everything is the outcome of some government intervention. Government is not just sleeping daily. Daily it is doing something. It is declaring something, it is announcing something, it is creating something, it is stopping some old policy, bringing some new policy. Why all that? That is the role of the government. It has to intervene into the markets. Of course, once again, not necessarily that government intervention will always bring positive results. Sometimes it can backfire, sometimes it can be colossal failure, sometimes it could be very dangerous and completely breaking the back of the economy. That is a different story. But government intervention is not something that we can completely avoid or we should try to avoid. Even that is the nature of markets, they fail, and naturally the government intervention should be there for correcting that market failure. That is a role of government or intervention of the government, we can say. Like that, information failure also can be corrected by the government by having certain guidelines. For example, you have any of the food products that you use, are you able to see the calories details in that, whether it is vegetarian or non-vegetarian, green color, red color, and then what are the contents of that, or how much protein is there, how much whatever these things are there, carbohydrates are there. It's all published. Maybe 10 years back, 15 years back, was that there like that? No, it was not there like that. Because government asked the manufacturers to do so. That people have the information about what they are consuming. People cannot be kept in blind. They cannot be just said, okay, boss, take this bottle, eat this. It will be good for you. But what is in that? How do people know? People should know, no? That is how governments will create certain legislations wherein people get the better information. That is one of the ways of correcting the information failure. And also advertising standards and regulation also has to be done. Unfortunately, in real life, that is one front where our government is failing. Can't help it. But ideally, government should regulate advertisements also to correct the information failure. Information failure cannot be permitted by the government. Okay, I'm not a fan of anybody or I don't hate anybody. But when Patanjali has introduced something called Coronil or something, telling that this is going to cure coronavirus, was the advertisement banned or not? Yes, it was banned. That advertisement was not allowed to be broadcasted. Ayush Ministry itself has stopped that advertisement. Before that itself, our channels have done a lot of hangama and people already bought it because anyway, as I said, people are sheep. We don't know. It's not that we are wrong. That's what we are. We don't know things. We believe everything. Whoever somebody bigger than us tells something, we believe. So government definitely has to stop, and that is a good thing. At least that happened. Otherwise, what would have happened? Every Tom, Dick, and Harry would have said, "Oh, I created a medicine for corona. You buy this," because there is no side effect. You eat it, no problem. There may not be good effect also, bad effect also, but you are paying money for that, na? That is where advertising standards also are set by government. Live example recently only happened. Like that, government will also intervene for equitable distribution. The wealth and income inequalities are very dangerous for any society. As the inequalities increase, social unrest also increases. So government has to take some measures so that equitable distribution happens. One of the classic ways of doing it is progressive income tax, taxing the rich higher, and targeted budget reallocations to the poor segment. Like we see any budget, agriculture sector, health sector, education sector, targeted budget reallocations they will do. Unemployment compensations they will give, transfer payments, subsidies, social security schemes like Atal Pension Yojana and all that, reservations, land reforms, so many things government does for equitable distribution. That is the role of government, or we can say the intervention of the government in a nutshell. Then government will also have its fiscal policy, and broadly we can classify the fiscal policy into two categories. One is automatic stabilizers versus discretionary fiscal policy, and different instruments are there for the fiscal policy. There is a possibility of expansionary fiscal policy or a contractionary fiscal policy also, depending upon the situation in the market. But once again, we have to understand that so far whatever we discussed related to the market failure or government intervention into the market failure, that is one portion of the government's job, allocation and distribution function. Fiscal policy is a macroeconomic activity of the government. Naturally, in India, it is only done by central government. State governments cannot do all this. But how this happens? Sometimes it happens automatically and sometimes it happens discretionarily. So that is the two categories of fiscal policy. And at a broader level, we can say, what are the types of fiscal policy? Expansionary and contractionary policy. Expansionary policy is when adopted where there are recessionary situations, unemployment is more, business cycles are down, then expansionary fiscal policy will be announced. Recently, let us say after the COVID pandemic started somewhere in March, I think in April or May beginning, there was a big package that was announced by the central government as a fiscal stimulus to this economy. Why they had to do that? Because that is an example of expansionary fiscal policy. Because the market is in a downward situation, government support is required, so that little bit of boost will be adding to that stimulus, boost, impetus, whatever we can call it. All those things are caused by expansionary fiscal policy. Contractionary fiscal policy will be opposite, which rarely happens. India type of country should never adopt contractionary fiscal policies at all. We are not reached to that level. Ki, we are already too much, already reached to a level of saturation. No, that is some countries may be doing that. So contractionary fiscal policy is that which will reduce the overall economic activity. Expansionary fiscal policy is that which will increase the economic activity. Both will be taken by governments depending upon the situation. And what are the general instruments of the fiscal policy? Government expenditure itself will generate a lot of incomes, and also effect of multiplier we cannot forget. When government expenditure happens, that is not going to just increase the national income by the amount of expenditure. It is going to increase by more than the amount of expenditure that is actually spent, because of the effect of multiplier also. And then taxes is one way of fiscal policy instrument, increasing, decreasing, indirect taxes, direct taxes, all of them are instruments of fiscal policy. Budget is the instrument of fiscal policy, wherein, once again, how much of expenditure to be spent and how much of revenue to be collected will be discussed in the budget. Once in the budget is the biggest tool of the fiscal policy, we can say, or statement on the fiscal policy by the government. It is the official government's fiscal policy statement openly to the public, how much it is going to spend in the next year and how much it is going to uh, earn or revenue wise collect as taxes in the next year. And of course, when there is a difference between these two, the expenditure of the government and the revenue of the government, if there is a mismatch, government has to borrow. So public borrowing and debt repayment systems are also part of the fiscal policy. So these are the various broader things related to fiscal policy. And contractionary fiscal policy is different, expansionary fiscal policy is different. For long-term economic growth, fiscal policy will be very important. And not only for that, for reducing the inequalities of income and wealth also, fiscal policies will be there. But there are problems with this also, like there are limitations. And the limitations are all in the following areas. Sometimes the government may choose a wrong policy. Sometimes recognition lag is there, means there is a problem, but the problem is not recognized by the government. Government says, no, 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 Sabchanga, say everything is good, no problem at all. When you don't recognize the problem, when are you going to take an action against that problem, or when are you going to take some measure against that problem? So recognition lag is there. That is common. Any governments will have that. Okay, recognized, problem recognized, but will take long time to take decisions. Some governments take decisions quickly, some governments take long time. Committee, subcommittee, like that they will make and they will take a decision lag. Okay, decision taken, implementation lag will be there. It's not easy to implement all decisions, particularly in this country. So implementation lag will be there. Implementation also happened. Impact lag also could be there. Implementation happened, but it happened badly. So what happens? There is a problem there also. Everything will not automatically convert into good results. Idea may be good, intention may be good, but still the implementation and impact need not always be good. That is the problem or limitation of the fiscal policy. That is there with any government, any country. That is how the public finance will be there. Or important aspect of public finance. Government's role in a market is the chapter 2, public finance. So chapter 1 about national income computations is very crucial. Even for problems also, easily 10 marks to 15 marks can be expected from that chapter 1 itself. Chapter 2 also very important, easily 10 marks can be expected from that chapter. Money market is the third chapter, where there is concept of money demand and money supply. There are many points in the money market and concept of money also. What are the functions of the money? It acts like a medium of exchange, and it is a store of value, and it is the basis of credit, a unit of account, and a standard of postponed payment. Each of them are the functions of money. This question can be asked also like that. And when you look at the characteristics of money or theories of the demand of the money, there are so many theories. Classical approach is there, or neoclassical approach is there, Keynesian theory is there, inventory approach and Friedman's approach and risk approach. So many approaches towards the theory of demand for money are there, and these are actually more technical in nature, and in fact difficult to uh, really understand the essence of them in a very short period of time. So they have to be studied and understood in detail only. So we cannot really go through them at a general level. If anything can be understood, yes, those are okay. These are the characteristics of money. Should be generally acceptable, durable. It should be difficult to counterfeit. It should be scarce. It should be easily transportable, and then it should have uniformity. And if you see currency as a note, it will have mostly all of the features. It's a debatable issue whether it is really difficult to counterfeit or not. Fine. Nobody just like that though cannot counterfeit these things. So that is definitely the characteristics of money. Demand for money, how it will be at a broader level. If we see, the demand for money will be depending upon, according to the classical approach, depending upon this MV is equal to PT, average price level, multiplied with the total number of transactions. So in other words, demand for money is driven by the transactional motive. According to Fisher's equation, people need money because they want to buy goods, because they want to buy services. Where from they will buy without money? They need money because of that, according to that approach. That is called classical approach. Here, according to the neoclassical approach or Cambridge approach, there are one more thing that is added. Of course, there is one thing that is transaction, plus there is going to be a hedge against the uncertainty also. The money they want to have as a precautionary motive also. Something if something happens in future, so I should have money with me. So I will save it. I'll keep it. That is precautionary motive. Because future is uncertain, maybe suddenly if some requirement comes, we may not have money with us at that time. So what I do, out of the money that I earned now, I save a little bit. That is what is the other motive. So the classical approach corely focused on the transaction motive, whereas neoclassical approach or Cambridge approach focused on transaction motive anyway will be there, and people do it for precautionary motive also. Then the Keynes developed this liquidity preference theory, very popular theory, liquidity preference theory. In that, he has mentioned another motive also in addition to already what is there. So he classified three motives for people holding money. One is transactions motive, another one is precautionary motive, and another one is speculative motive also. Speculative motive he has created with the intention of understanding the switching between cash and bonds. If let us say interest rates are high, then people will completely purchase bonds only. If the interest rates are lower than what they are expected, they are expecting certain level of interest rates. If the actual interest rates are lower than that, they will keep completely entire money with them in the form of cash. That's what Keynes said, though it is not practical exactly the way it happens. But according to Keynes, speculative motive is also one more motive because of which people keep money. They keep cash now so that in future, if the interest rates rise, the bond prices come down and they can buy. And they will not keep any cash now if the interest rates are high, because in future, if the interest rates go low, the bond prices will become high and they can sell these bonds and make money. That is the speculative demand for money according to Keynes, and that is one of the important theories, liquidity preference theory. In addition to that, there are some more approaches to the post-Keynesian developments in the theory of money. Baumol approach is there in the financial management, cash management also. They called this as inventory approach. So according to them, this Keynes approach of either fully cash or fully bonds is wrong. People will keep sufficient amount of cash also and sufficient amount of bonds also, and they will switch between them. Sometimes they will purchase bonds, sometimes they will sell bonds to encash them. And how they will do that? In the market, naturally, because in the market they are all available to be purchased and sold. But finally, what is their objective is they have to minimize their opportunity cost of cash. If they are keeping cash, they are losing the interest on the bonds. That is the opportunity cost of keeping the cash. And they try to minimize that opportunity cost as much as possible. And a very important aspect in this theory inventory approach is the Baumel's theory has identified transaction costs also as an important factor. So various things will have an impact. What are the things which will have an impact on the average monthly holding is one, income of the person, two, price levels, and three, transaction costs. And it is a negative function of the interest rates, nominal interest rate high, because I, if it is high, which is the opportunity cost of holding the cash. Why anybody will hold cash? If interest rates are high, he would invest in bonds only. So that means what? Less cash will be held if the interest rates are high, more cash will be held if the interest rates are low. That is a negative relationship between them. Whereas more income, more cash, more price levels, more cash, and more transaction costs, more cash. Why more transaction cost, more cash? Once again, if the transaction costs are more, every time you sell the bonds and convert into cash, you have to pay them. That is not good. Simply take this as an example. Like you go to an ATM, let us say 4 transactions are free in a month for your ATM. If let us say no transaction is free at all, imagine in that situation, what will you do? Will you go to the ATM and draw the money number of times, or will you draw the money required for the entire month once only? Naturally, we do the second. Why? Because transaction costs are high. When the transaction costs are high, people will not keep the money in the banks. They will withdraw and keep with them as cash. So that is what happens. That is the logic for ourselves, common thing. But when you look at bonds, that is about the market costs. The bonds, whenever we buy or sell, there will be commission, brokerage, security transaction taxes. So many transaction costs are there. If they are high, then the people prefer to hold cash than the bonds. So that means there is a positive relation between bonds, the transaction costs and the amount of cash that people keep. That is about inventory theory approach, Baumel's model, very important model. And Milton Friedman has just added to the original Keynes theory, nothing special here. It is also just mentioned that in addition to the bonds, he has added to the stocks also, nothing special. I mean, like let us say equity shares. Keynes only talked about bonds. Now Friedman added the stocks also, shares also. If the shares returns are high, then why should people keep in cash? They will buy shares and vice versa. That's what this Friedman has told, which is an extension of Keynes theory, only adding one more portfolio called equity shares. Then risk behavior is something different, which is a point told by Tobin, that demand for money usually is driven by the people's mentality. Sometimes people call it behavioral economics. So behavior of the people is something which drives everything. All our graphs, all our big equations and all will not actually result much. Basically, what is the people's mentality towards risk? That will have an impact on the demand for money according to Tobin. That is called risk approach. Those are the various theories of demand for money. Then supply for money, if we see that supply for money has to be done by whom? Naturally, our Reserve Bank of India has to do that in India. So what are the sources of the supply of money? How to measure that? And what are the determinants of the money supply? And concept of the money multiplier are all contained in the theory of money supply. Sources of money supply, simply speaking, RBI naturally, that is going to be the biggest source of money supply, but it is not the only source. Okay, let us say Reserve Bank and commercial banks put together will be the sources of money in Indian context. How is that? Because Reserve Bank creates something called high-powered money, which is currency and other things. But commercial banks create credit money. Money is not just currency. That is another point you have to understand. Currency, for example, in India, somewhere around 20 lakhs crores is there. Is it the only money that India has? No. Indians have more than 1 crore crores of deposits in the bank accounts. That is also money. That is money. So how that money is just generated? Is it currency equivalent to money? No. Money is there, cash is there, currency is there, different words. When currency or cash we are talking, that is something that RBI only prints. Commercial banks cannot print in India. In some countries like Hong Kong and all, even commercial banks can print Singapore, Hong Kong, some places like that. But in India, only RBI prints the currency. Commercial banks cannot print the currency, but what they can do is they can create credit money. And that is how in the credit creation process, they will multiply the money that is originally there into lips and bonds. So the money sources we can say in India are broadly two. Broadly, Reserve Bank of India and the commercial banks also are part of that. Banking system, entire banking system is the source of money supply, we can say. And how the measurement of money supply should happen. Again, as I said, these are very technical things. You need to be remembering those formula. Broadly, the measurement like M1, which is called narrow money, and then M2, M3, M4, which is called broad money. These are formulae you have to remember, which are related to measurement of the money supply. And these have been changed later on to NM1, NM2, NM3 also. Later on, liquidity aggregates are added L1, L2, L3. This formula and all you have to just remember. Remember this formula, that is enough, because there is nothing particularly conceptual about it. If RBI says this is M1, that is M1. Who are we to say something about it? That is just a more or less a memory-based discussion requirement. But you should remember those things. Problems can be expected from that also. Then, what is this money multiplier? Money multiplier is calculated like this: money supply divided by monetary base. In other words, if the monetary base increases by 20%, let us say, if the money supply itself increases by, let us say, 100%, then money multiplier is 5. So, not necessarily the monetary base percentage increase and money supply increase are same. Definitely the money supply will be increased more times proportionately than the increase in monetary base. But by how much? That's what money supply or money multiplier approach tells us. So how this money multiplier approach will tell us what kind of factors will determine the overall money supply according to this approach is stock of the high powered money, which is nothing but currency or published by the RBI. So this will tell the psychology of the RBI. If RBI wants to have some decisions that will have impact on the overall money supply, then the ratio of the deposit to reserves, when the banks want to keep certain deposits here, when banks keep the certain portion of their deposits in the form of reserves, to that extent they cannot lend it to the people. If the excess reserves are there created by the banks, then those excess reserves will reduce the money supply. If the reserves are maintained just about what is required, something like CRR, then the money supply will be more. So once again, we can say the first one is the decision of RBI, and the second one is the decision of commercial banks, and third one is the decision of public. So all the three people put together will have an influence on money supply: RBI and commercial banks, and ratio of deposit to currency. That depends upon the people's intentions. If people want to hold cash with them more, then money supply will be less. You have to understand that. Why? If the money is in the banking system, then because of the multiplier effect, it will generate more and more money. If money is in the form of cash with the people, not in the form of bank deposits, then the money supply will go slow down. So the concept of money multiplier is a very crucial concept. Credit multiplier adds to the money multiplier. Naturally, when there is a 100 rupees which is let us say deposited by one person in the bank, imagine if the bank's SLR, CRR types of ratios are there, it can lend, let us say, 80% of that. Just for example, 20% it has to keep in reserves, let us say, including SLR, CLR, whatever. And it can lend 80 rupees to somebody else. So bank has lent to somebody else the 80 rupees. This 80 rupees, where it will be? Okay, it may be in the form of cash also, it may be deposited in another bank also. Assuming a proper banking system, it will be deposited in another bank. So what happens? Other bank has 80 rupees now. So what that will do? Out of that 80 rupees, 80%, 64 rupees, it will give to somebody as loan. And then that will be given or deposited into another bank. That will be given to somebody. Like this keeps on multiplying. We started with only 100 rupees. Now that 100 has already become 144, that will be increasing further. So 100 rupees input into the banking system will multiply. That is what is called as credit multiplier. That is the reason why banking systems deposits are going to be generating more money supply than people having cash in their hands. But yes, public behavior, whether they want to have cash in hand more or whether they want to have deposits as expressed in the currency to deposit ratio or cash to deposit ratio, that will also have an impact on overall money supply. These are the various aspects of money supply. Now, monetary policy is something that Reserve Bank of India has to decide upon. Normally, it happens quarterly in India, and there are various objectives of monetary policy. Each of them can be a question, and various channels that are, we can say, the mechanisms through which the Reserve Bank of India actually transmits this monetary policy. So we can call them as transmission mechanisms. So many of them are there: interest rate channel, or exchange rate channel, quantum channel, asset price channel, etc. These are once again a lot of technical things, require a lot of detailed explanation and understanding. But at a general level, if you would like to look at the instruments that RBI uses, there are certain direct instruments and indirect instruments which RBI uses to influence and create the monetary policy. Some of the direct instruments are CRR and SLR. Simple logic: if CRR and SLR are more, then banks have to keep some of their money with RBI in the form of CRR and some of the money in the form of gold, government securities, or foreign currency in itself, with itself. But point is, definitely to that extent, the bank cannot lend to others. So more the CRR and SLR, less the money supply will be, and vice versa. That's what happens when RBI changes any of them. And sometimes RBI can direct the banks to give credit to the priority sectors in India, like agriculture or MSME sectors. Or sometimes it can have administered interest rate, which rarely happens in India because mostly the banks have the freedom to choose their interest rate. RBI will not directly tell that this is the interest rate you charge, but it might indirectly influence the interest rates. How? By creating its own repo operations and open market operations, and creating the MSF, marginal standing facility, with the bank, with the RBI for the banks, and market based discount windows. These are the indirect instruments, we can say, and each of them has their own implication. At a broader level, if you understand each of the implications, that will be clear. Higher the CRR, lower the liquidity in the system, and vice versa. So let us say increase of CRR, can we say it is a contractionary monetary policy? Yes. Decrease of CRR is a expansionary monetary policy. Same logic applies to SLR also. If increase of SLR happened, that means it is a contractionary monetary policy. If decrease of SLR happened, that is an expansionary monetary policy. That is the CRR and SLR are ultimately completely in the hands of RBI. RBI has the power to change them, increase them, decrease them according to its monetary policy decisions. And there are other types of policies also, as we discussed. One of them is repo and reverse repo operations. So repo rate is the rate. These are the two things: repo and reverse repo. So repo is the rate where banks can borrow money from the Reserve Bank of India. The banks need some money. Naturally, Reserve Bank of India is the banker's bank. So what happens? The banks can borrow money from Reserve Bank of India. At what rate of interest they can borrow money from Reserve Bank of India is called repo rate. Let us say once again repo rate increased. What happens? The banks will borrow less. That means money supply and liquidity will become less. If repo rate decreased, then banks will borrow more because interest rate is more, interest rate is less. Banks have lesser opportunity cost, so they will borrow more, and naturally they will lend more also, because of which the liquidity will go up. So repo rate and liquidity are inversely related, and lot of times people do this mistake. They think because repo rate and the liquidity are inversely related, reverse repo rate and liquidity will be directly related. They think no, that is wrong. Reverse repo rate and liquidity also are inversely related. Why is that? For that, we need to understand what is reverse repo rate. Reverse repo rate is the rate where RBI borrows money from the banks, or let us say banks are investing money with RBI or parking money with RBI. If the reverse repo rate is more, then what banks will do? They will park money with the RBI. That means what? Banks will not lend that much money to public. They are idling it. They are keeping it as a stock. So liquidity will reduce even in that case. On the other side, if the reverse repo rate is less, then banks will park less money with RBI. And what they will do with that? They will not eat. They have to distribute or give to the public as loans. That means the liquidity becomes more. Credit money is generated more when the reverse repo rate is less. Impact of increase or decrease of reverse repo rate and repo rate, both are same. Just because name is reverse, don't think that the impact is reverse. Impact is not reverse. The repo rate is the rate of interest at which banks can borrow money from RBI. Reverse repo rate is the rate at which Reserve Bank of India can borrow money from banks, or otherwise you can say banks can invest their excess cash with Reserve Bank as a some parking for some time temporarily. So that is about repo rate and reverse repo, very important. LAF, liquidity adjustment facility, is like a kind of overdraft facility given to the banks wherein they can draw the money from RBI overnight also. That is the main facility for the commercial banks, basically to withdraw money from RBI when they want. Of course, within the limits, not like exceeding the limits. With the collateral of the government securities that the banks already have, they can take this kind of overdraft from the Reserve Bank of India. In case of urgency, they can do that. So that is the LAF facility, we can say. Then there is another facility also, MSF facility, that also is there, which is over and above the LAF, and naturally the rate of that also will be much higher. That is called marginal standing facility. That question also can be asked, though it is not here. So that is also an important aspect to be noted, which will be a penal interest rate. MSF rate will be the highest of all. Below that, there will be repo rate. Below that, there will be reverse repo rate. This is how the RBI's rates will be. MSF is the one where banks will borrow from RBI over and above the liquidity adjustment facility at a highest rate of interest. And usually banks will not do that unless they are so desperate to get money immediately from Reserve Bank of India. These are the various ways through which the Reserve Bank of India affects the money supply through its monetary policies. That is another technical chapter, we can say. Now moving on to the last topic, international trade. I don't think much of explanation will be required here also, because most of this is like social studies. What are the arguments in favor of international trade? What are the arguments against the international trade? These are all generic things only, nothing special or technical about them. But certain theories of international trade, definitely, yes, we have to look at them. Mercantilist view of international trade is simply export as much as possible, gather gold and silver. That's what old people, old mercantilists like Vasco da Gama, Columbus type of people, they thought that is international trade. That is their theory. Theory of absolute advantage was propagated by Adam Smith, who says when one country is specializing in the production of one commodity, when it is having a specialization in one commodity, when it has absolute cost advantage, then it should manufacture it and export it. And other country which has the specialization in another commodity, that should manufacture and export it. Means only the countries with absolute cost advantage can manufacture and export to the other countries. If a country is not having absolute cost advantage, they have to keep on depending upon imports only, according to the theory of absolute advantage. But Ricardo has contradicted that, saying not necessarily absolute advantage is required. Even comparative advantage is there also, it is enough. Rather than looking at the advantage, you look at the disadvantage of one country. If the disadvantage is less in one commodity than other commodity, that is enough. That country can manufacture and export such kind of products. That is called theory of comparative advantage. And there is MTT, or modern theory of trade, where they say that basically because of the differences in the factor endowments like capital, labor, other resources, because of the differences only the cost advantages will emerge, which is reality, where the countries are having highest capital, which are capital abundant countries, we can say, they will be uh, more manufacturing the goods which are capital intensive, like electronic equipments, etc. Where which countries are labor abundant countries, they will be producing labor intensive type of products, like India, like China, labor intensive. Of course, China has both capital and labor abundancy. That's a different story. But countries with capital abundancy will be doing capital intensive industries and products. They will be more competitive in that. Countries with labor abundancy will have more competitive pricing for those type of products or services where labor is most important. India's competitive advantage in the entire world is the software sector. That is undoubted and undisputed. Why is that? Because we have abundance of labor. We have so many engineers that the software industry can absorb any of them. That much of abundance of labor we have. So naturally, what happened? We created cheap software professionals compared with the other countries, and that has added a lot of value to the entire world economy. Because of our labor abundancy, we could create a competitive advantage in that area, like software provision and maintenance, information technology, etc., etc. That is not because of our innovation and all. That is because of our cheap labor provision. That is a reality. But that is nothing wrong in that. That is what is the any country will have their own advantages. We have advantage of labor. Our people are too many, so we take that advantage and prosper in that industry. That's what any country does, according to this Hexer-Ohlin theory of trade, also called modern theory of trade, MTT we can call. But according to them, also over a period of time, the factor prices will be equalized. When there is a free trade that happens, this mismatch between the factor prices will not be there according to them. Once again, not going to happen properly. A software engineer, fresh engineer coming out of a university in America is definitely going to get 10 to 15 times more salary than a software engineer is freshly coming out of a university in India. That is for sure. That much difference in the factor price is there. That is our advantage. If this difference is gone, then why should they actually recruit us? They will recruit themselves. So this difference in the factor prices causes the advantages or disadvantage to one country over the other country. But according to them, over a period of time when the free trade happens, continues to occur, these factor prices will become equalized. That means the basic returns on the capital and wages will converge across the countries. They become same. That's what they say theoretically. Practically, we cannot see that because it doesn't happen that quickly. It takes a lot of time. Certain areas we can observe that, certain areas we cannot observe that. Like for example, mobile phones and all, if we see, more or less they are priced equally throughout the world, more or less. So the kind of industry itself is almost like normalized. Like that, it will apply, but it has its own time limits and different, you can say differences in the application of that. That is called MTT and factor endowment theory. Then factor price equalization theorem is an extension of that. Both are same. Both are proposed by same people. The new trade theory is something different. What they say is major reasons for the expansion of global trade is economies of scale and network effects. They are the major reasons according to them. And that is also true. China is able to really do fantastic international trade only because of economies of scale, because they produce too much at the same time. That much volume we cannot imagine they will produce. So they will be they'll be taking the advantage of that economies of scale. These are the theories of international trade. Then instruments of trade policy, there are so many things. Generally for finance people, accounting people, this should not be a special item of discussion. We know them. Tariffs measures are there, non-tariff measures are there. So different types of tariffs, a specific tariff, ad valorem tariff means in addition to the value. Specific tariff will be generally on the physical units, ad valorem will be on the value. And there could be so many types of tariffs. Though these all will be there in Customs Act at final level, but these names we can just generally understand one by one. And countries will impose anti-dumping duties on the other countries if they feel certain commodities are going to be dumped by the other country onto our country at a very lower cost. Then, in order to counter that, simply whenever we say this entire topic of instruments of trade policy, our job or anybody's intention there is to control the imports and encourage the exports ultimately. So, control the imports, how it happens? Somehow we have to counter the tendency of that importing, that imports will be more when their cost is less. When they are so cheap, then imports naturally will increase. So to counter that, government will try to increase the cost of imports by applying all these tariffs and duties. That is one type of measures that governments take in encouraging exports on one hand and discouraging imports on the other hand. And so many effects of, or you can say impacts of tariff are there, and these are all various I can say almost financial things only, nothing special about that. And export related measures also can be taken, something like ban on the export of certain things, ban on onions export is banned sometimes, rice export is banned sometimes. Government will take all these decisions according to its trade policy, international trade policy. And there is no need that these policies and measures will be permanent, not necessarily. They will be temporary also. According to the requirement, they can do all these things. So that is the main point. And some of the internationally famous words everybody should be aware of. Embargo. Embargo means total ban on import or export of some commodity to a particular country or region for some or indefinite period. That is called embargo. For example, North Korea is under embargo now. Iran is under embargo now from America. Some of the countries are under embargo from other countries. There will not be any trade between them. All imports and exports between them are banned. That situation is called embargo. That is common, particularly in international politics, to impose that when other country is probably posing some threat to the security of one country. So that also happens in international trade as part of it. And some other non-technical, non-tariff measures also will happen, including some technical as well as non-technical measures. These all can be generally read and understood, nothing special. Actually, this entire chapter of international trade itself is a general chapter. Trade negotiations is all general knowledge, is all like social studies paper, various aspects that already happened earlier, like GATT, WTO, what kinds of agreements that happened already, what is GATT. Each of them is a short note question. And what are the important agreements related to WTO, TRIPS, TRIMS, etc. All these things are part of international trade. Again, it's like more or less reading a newspaper or a social studies uh, textbook than anything particularly about economics. Yes, international trade is a part of the syllabus, no doubt, but more than economics, this is more about the policies of the governments and what actually happened. WTO is reality; it happened already. Doha Round happened. Doha is a city in Qatar, and where the meeting happened, so it is called Doha Round. And what are the various principles of WTO? All will be good only. Nobody will say we will spoil the world, we will smash the world. Everybody will tell, oh, we are going to increase transparency, we are going to make it free trade, we are going to be progressive, we are going to be liberal, blah, 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 blah. Everything will be good only. So these all things can be just read, remembered. Some of them will have to be written if these type of questions are asked. And exchange rate mechanism also is one more point in this international trade. This is also more or less a finance related area only, wherein the exchange rate between two currencies can be expressed as a direct quote also, indirect quote also. This is a very important aspect. When we say $1 is 66 rupees, that is a direct quote. That means foreign currency is the base currency when we say this. So here, US dollar is expressed as 66 rupees. Rupees is a foreign currency there, that is the base currency. In case of indirect quote, domestic currency is the base currency. Like for example, $0.151 per rupee. That is called as indirect quote. So there is a difference between direct quote and indirect quote. Sometimes cross rate will be there if there is no exchange between two countries or currencies at all. So let us say there is one country which has some currency which we don't have any relation with. So what we will do? What we will convert first of all rupees into dollars, and maybe dollars and that country have some rate. So that will become our cross rate. That is also possible. And appreciation and depreciation of currency keeps on happening. And majorly at a broader level, what we have to understand is appreciation of currency, domestic currency, is going to be costing the country in the form of lesser exports and more imports. When the appreciation of the currency happens, that is not going to be good always. It may look good, but it is not always good. When the depreciation of the currency happens, then our exports become more attractive and the exports become more. Of course, imports become costly, so imports become less. So when appreciation of currency happens and depreciation of currency happens, that will give an opposite effect. So simply speaking, appreciation of currency will discourage exports and encourage imports, and vice versa. When depreciation of currency happens, it will encourage exports, discourage imports. So depreciation is what generally happens. As far as India is concerned, it has been depreciating since long time. We all know that. So that is about exchange rates, and expression of the exchange rates also can be real exchange rate and nominal exchange rate on the basis of the foreign price index. So that is also logically the same as the inflation rate that we have looked at. Real and nominal is always that. Nominal is always domestic divided by foreign in this case. That is the real exchange rate if we want. Nominal exchange rate multiplied with domestic price index divided by foreign price index. What is price index? Once again is inflation only. So real is excluding the inflation effect. Nominal is including the inflation effect. That is the difference between real and nominal. Like this, some other aspects like forward market, future market related to currencies are also there. Foreign exchange market and different types of markets, spot market, futures market, etc. These are all part of the foreign currency transactions, etc. most of them are generally self-explanatory. And even international capital movements, though it is fully once again like a social studies paper, social studies chapter. Broadly, there are two types of things that investments move from one country to another country. We can call them as FDI, foreign direct investment, or FII, that is foreign institutional investment or foreign portfolio investment. Either way it can be done. Practically speaking, in India nowadays, this differentiation itself is not there. In syllabus only it is remaining. In reality, everything is investment in India. We are not differentiating FPI, FDI, FII anymore. That is the other side of it. But yes, because there is a chapter like that, questions can come from that. At a broader level, you should be able to explain, not all of them, some of them as benefits of this FDI and benefits of this FII. And in Indian context, how to understand what are the differences between FDI and FII. That is the you have to just understand what are the differences between FDI and FII or FPI and advantages and disadvantages of those items. That is the other aspect within the topic of international trade. With that, we'll conclude this session. And with that, we'll conclude this rapid revision of financial management as well as EFF also. Thank you. Was that useful, Sushmita?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all the best, Amma.
Thank you, sir.